To help us try and get there, I want to bring on Amber Athey, the Washington editor for Spectator USA. So, Amber, it's an allegation that we've heard once before. It's, of course, we heard it from the 2016 election. We've probably heard it at least once a week ever since. And now we see it once again happening in 2020. So what is the administration's kind of response to the latest thing that we've seen regarding possible Russian interference in the 2020 election?
Right. Well, it's hard to even respond to this because we don't even really know what the evidence is that Russia is apparently trying to help reelect Donald Trump. There's been no indication that they've overheard things on Russian lines. This just looks like another case of people being upset about Russian Twitter trolls and Facebook memes. It's basically 2016 all over again. At that time, we found out that, as you mentioned, there were no votes changed and that the bulk of the so-called Russian disinformation were Facebook memes that people were sharing in pro-Donald Trump groups. And by the way, also pro-Bernie Sanders, Black Lives Matter, all types of left-wing groups as well. So after we look at President Donald Trump's first term and the sanctions he's placed on Russian officials, the number of Russian officials he's actually kicked out of D.C., it just seems like this is another case of sour grapes and trying to indicate that the election will be unfair before it even really kicks off.
And I think you bring up a really good point, too, because in that New York Times report, they use 5 anonymous sources, which is actually kind of a lot of anonymous sources for an article, but they don't necessarily say what was said in that type of briefing that the intelligence community gave to lawmakers and other members of the administration. So we're still missing a lot of details, but you point out that in Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation, he did kind of go through those online information campaigns, such as it being memes, such as it being just kind of different methods to sow discord throughout the United States. It's really kind of playing on the polarization that we currently have right now in our country. And that kind of led, of course, to the most recent news regarding the Director of National Intelligence being replaced, Joseph McGuire, temporarily by Grinnell, but it also looks like he's going to be on a temporary basis as well. Do we know maybe anything about who might take that position on a more permanent basis?
You know, it's really interesting. President Donald Trump kind of made a misstep here because he told reporters yesterday that he was considering Doug Collins for the position, a Republican senator, and then Doug Collins publicly denied that he would be interested in the role. So you would think that the president would have made sure that that was a possibility before he floated it publicly. Now, of course, the administration having to backtrack on that assertion, and they have not really floated any other names yet of who might replace Rick Grinnell, but there are concerns that Grinnell would not be a good temporary replacement because they're not sure that he can get confirmed in the Senate because of his relative lack of intelligence experience.
And, you know, that was kind of a problem, too, when John Ratcliffe was one of the names that was being floated around as well. He was going to take over that role. At least President Trump said that he was a contender for that role, only for him to kind of walk that back as well. Again, once again, Democrats saying that Ratcliffe was a Trump loyalist, kind of the same accusations that they brought against Grinnell. So it's going to seem to be an issue that no matter who is in that position, they're kind of going to get the same kind of criticisms from the president's critics. But now they kind of peg this out to say that this is the way that the president is acting post-impeachment. They say, for example, they looked at those pardons, and they said the president is acting authoritarian. They saw what happened in the Roger Stone case, and they said that the president's overstepping his bounds in that regard. Is the president acting any different post-impeachment, or is this kind of just something that he's been doing, but now this is the new conversation that's being had in the media?
No, I mean, this is classic Donald Trump. It's not a secret that he likes to choose his allies and people that speak favorably about him on television to fill some of these administrative roles. So this is certainly not a post-impeachment specialty. This is what he's been doing since the beginning of his administration. And in terms of things like the pardons, the commutations, weighing in on the Department of Justice case against Roger Stone, these are all well within Donald Trump's presidential powers. You may disagree with his decision to do that, but it's not that he is acting authoritative. It's that he's using his powers just in a way that people who oppose him politically happen to disagree with.
No, and I think the outrage in the media was kind of demonstrated yesterday, at least for me. I mean, for the past week, we've heard how it was a big Tuesday night massacre, as they were calling it, when the DOJ stepped in and said 3 to 4 years for Roger Stone would be more appropriate than the 7 to 9 that was recommended, only to have the judge in that case essentially agree with the Justice Department's revised sentencing, which was the 3 to 4 years. Stone got 40 months, so it kind of looks like they were at least right in that regard. So it seems like we're going to have more outrage once again as we did in 2016. It looks like we haven't learned our lessons from 2020. But Amber Athey, thank you very much for joining us tonight.